Welcome back, everyone. Here we are with another episode of Beautiful Ashes podcast, The Healing Journey, The 7 Stepping Stones, and we are on Chapter 5, The Road. And again with me is Victor Fadul, the co-author, and Brian Hackney, the director of the Healing Place at Cross Timbers Church. Thank you guys for coming.
You're welcome. Look forward to it.
So let's just get right in. The road is a long journey. The road is long. The road is windy. There's lots of U-turns, lots of construction along the way. Just a lot, right, Vic?
I remember going through this chapter with you, trying to fit everything in the right place, get everything in order, make it all make sense. Because I remember you even saying, wait, was that when it happened? We had to go back and actually chronologically spell out how things happened, because there was a lot that went on when you were after your healing journey, right? You had gotten to a place where things were, going well, and you were working divorce care, and you were emerging back, into life, which is a blessing in and of itself. A lot of people don't get back out,
right?
Put themselves back out there to date or see if there's love again around the corner,
right?
And this chapter details what it looked like for you to embark on that journey.
Right.
And you had a whole bunch of other things going on at the time.
Sure.
Your kids in high school, kid going off to college, of course, leading divorce care and family. And tell me about what it was like for you to start.
I did feel like, Brian and I've talked about this a lot as you're journeying, coming off of the floor, coming out from under a divorce, how long do you have to wait until you date? Everyone always asks that question. And I don't really think it's a specific time, but I do think it's critical to take the time to know who you are, know who you are in Christ and who he says you are. So, because if you aren't rooted in that and you don't understand, why you got to where you're at, you will just carry all of those same issues right into any other relationship. Yeah. So I really did feel like I took a lot of time, a lot of healing, a lot of counseling, a lot of wise mentorship, and a lot of serving to really get to know who Beth really is, the Beth that God always intended me to be. Because until I know her, I won't be able to offer that inside of a relationship with somebody. So I do really believe I took that time, and it's still difficult. One thing that relationships do is they love to bring out all your character defects. So there was a lot of that in that process but I knew there was a heart's desire for companionship. And what I mean by that is just somebody to share my life with. I look at that as, and we were talking about this not too long ago, about why God designed a marriage.
Yeah.
And why we all, or not all, but lots of people are drawn towards, partnership and having a companion, someone to walk through it. But I do believe one of God's biggest designs for it is because it's a sharpening process. It helps you become the best version of yourself when it's healthy. Yeah. And I think we long for that, to do that. So I was okay with that heart's desire.
Was there ever a time, so you finally got to the point where you were going to put yourself back out there. Was there ever a time where you thought, I'll never do that again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some people know it's going to be a while, maybe 3 years, 4 years, 2 years, whatever. I heard one lady say, because we've heard all the marriage experts, at least 2 years after divorce, right? I heard one lady say, oh, you got to wait 10 years. Like, oh my God. Okay. That was her story.
That's a little much, but maybe for her, that's what she needed.
So many men or women think, okay, I know I will, but just not yet. But some say, no, hell will freeze over before I'll ever get back out there.
I absolutely felt that for sure the first year. The devastation of that, there was no way I wanted to ever put myself in that position to ever be hurt like that again. So in a protective way, it was like, no way. And, and I had my children that I just couldn't envision what that would look like. And quite honestly, that is a hard element when you are, you have children and you're not with their father any longer, and you're trying to introduce somebody else into that, and maybe they have children. There is a lot of dynamics that go on. It's really messy.
Yeah.
It really is messy. But there was still that longing for that. And so I just tried to listen to my heart and allow God to lead me in that way. And but we talk about this in the book, Vic, how it's really important, I believe, that when you're at this stage and after you've done your healing, that you do date intentionally. So we talked about that quite a bit, what that means.
What did that look like?
Well, what that looked like is I was in a different place, right? I've told you I wasn't in the same journey as I am now, but it was very important to me that the person I date be on a similar journey, that we are, that who we are following, that we are, following Jesus, that we have the same destination. And everyone's on a different ups and downs in that, but someone that was willing to walk that out with me, but putting Christ at the center. And so that was like my number one. And I would talk, I would even work with women. We talked a lot about having your non-negotiables, stand firm in what you believe in and don't settle. And hold out for that. So that's what dating intentionally look like.
Example of a non-negotiable?
Well, that was one of them, just a Christ-centered person, someone that they had family values, that their family was important to them. If they had children, that was, a top priority to them. That was really important to me.
Basically, you were saying, I'm not going to waste time just getting back in the dating scene.
Yeah.
If I can tell that this person is not going to spiritually lead my home,
yes,
or it's someone that I couldn't see myself married to spending the rest of my life with,
yeah,
I'm not going to waste time.
Exactly.
Like, date over.
Right.
Check.
And maybe that's right. Because of, my age. I was married 20 years, and prior to that, I dated, all the way through high school and college and things like that. I just didn't feel the need for that because for me, it was more about, I did want, at this point, would love to be married again and find a companion. So I was very, that was really important to me to have these non-negotiables.
And see, for me, Beth, this is a huge message for people who are thinking, oh, I can't be that choosy. Because what if I just let the only one that's ever going to love me get away, right? And you're saying, no, stick to your guns.
Yeah.
Make your list. Be choosy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that because they have such a fear of being alone.
Right.
We do have that fear of being, and I fell into that as well. You start to compromise because of the fear of being alone. And I think I see a lot of people, and one of the other things I think is really, that we try to do too, is we look for that individual to fill this hole or gaping emptiness that we have that really only God can fill. I call that the God-shaped hole.
Yeah.
And if we try to have a person fill that is disaster.
You place unreasonable expectations on another person to fulfill a role that they'll never be able to fill.
Absolutely. It's very well said, yeah.
So I underlined this when I read it. It said, eventually, not only did I not care that I was single, but I was okay with being single. Not just, I didn't care. Like, I really, really embraced that because I wasn't alone. I had Jesus. So what does that mean? That sounds great.
It does sound great.
Hey, so when God created Adam, he said, Adam had God, right? He said, it's not good for man to be alone.
Right.
So when you say I had Jesus, though, you had to have him first and be okay with just him.
Yes.
So what did that mean?
And it's kind of what I was just talking about, my God-shaped hole.
Okay.
I really needed to allow time for Jesus to get into me and really heal that deep, deep place of me that was in pain. And that was what all the things we talked about in the prior chapters were what I was doing, be it in my building my foundation, being in my secret place with him, surrounding myself with community. Truly, that was just, I really felt that was me becoming the version of myself that he always intended me to become. And there was this beautiful relationship that I was having with him that I actually started to really like who I was and who he meant for me to be.
Wow.
And I felt very secure in who the Beth that God had designed.
Wow. You liking who you were, that's huge.
That's huge.
Yeah. And not looking for your identity in the feedback you're getting from a man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by that. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's a struggle. So just trying to separate out, your love for Jesus and then allowing then a man or if you're to come into your life because that's how they'll come on as a companion versus someone you're trying to use to fill some type of brokenness.
So during this singleness time, right, where you're being okay, being that you said you could focus on your children, you said this space requires, consistency in prayer and meditation. So I don't think we can talk about this enough. We all talk about prayer a lot.
Right.
So what did that meditation, again, we talked about the secret place and all that, but what did meditation in this time, what would you meditate on?
basically, my meditation time obviously is places in my secret place. Most of it happened, a lot of it on my walks and my runs out in nature, where I would just have these conversations with God. And it would really, a lot of it was a lot of learning. Again, I think I've said this before, of God giving me his lens to how what he wants for me, what his calling is on my life, not what the world is telling me or what the things I thought, worldly out there were going to fulfill me. It was really listening to him of what he has for me.
Which you were able to do because you knew his voice, because you read his word.
Exactly. So that's the progression how that gets us to the road. I mean, all that work back there of building the foundation, spending time in my secret place and spending time with community brought me to the confidence to walk out on this road that we talk about. But that's what I mean. Inside that singleness, that's that work that looks like.
So once you were ready to put yourself back out there, did you get on Tinder, Bumble, Christian Mingle? How'd you meet? What happened?
I did not do any of those. Not that I'm against any of those, because I do know people that have met them.
I met my wife on Hinge.
There, you're right. You did. I think, I did. I might have done that. People used to joke and say they were going to make a profile for me, but honestly, when obviously he is now my husband, Jamie, and but how I met him is after I came out from under my divorce and just started to rise up. I had a few really, really great friends that had just tried and trues, stayed with me through this all. And one of the things I told myself in part of my healing process was I was going to take care of those relationships and those friendships. Call them up, call those girlfriends up that just loved on me and cared for me, and just thank them and take time to really nurture those relationships. And one of them happened to be a great friend of mine, who we were neighbors when we lived in New Jersey, but she had moved to North Carolina and I'd never visited her. And she was like, "Oh, we would love to see you. Just come out and visit us." And I'm like, I'm going to put things on my calendar. I'm going to start finding joy in my life. And the memories, our kids were babies when we knew each other, but just, I spent a lot of time at their home. Whenever I was home alone a lot and two little kids, and I'd come over, her husband would cook for us, and Amy and I'd have a glass of wine and, just relax. And it was just, they just poured into me then. And I was looking so forward just to sitting in the backyard with them, just laughing.
Go hang out with old friends.
Yep, hang out with old friends. And she says, "Oh, and by the way, do you like coconut cream pie?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" She said, "Well, Chuck's friend Jamie's going to come over and he's going to bring a pie." I said, "Do not set me up." She said, no. They're great friends.
Cupid with his pie.
He only lives a few doors down. And I could just say the rest is history. But that is how I met Jamie.
Okay.
But there's a long journey from that time of meeting him. And so there's distance, obviously. He lives in North Carolina. I'm here. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons our relationship worked. We spent hours on the phone just talking, just the old fashioned on the phone talking. So we took the time to really get to know each other like the old school way.
But it wasn't just like bliss from
no.
So
no
dating, and you see this future, and we're talking about him, and and then so what happens?
A lot. We were back and forth for quite a while, and like I said earlier, relationships will love to bring out your character defects in areas of your heart that are still not healed. And even though I had done a lot of work, he had done some work, but he really hadn't done a lot of the digging of all of the traumas and things that have happened to him. And it was showing inside our relationship. And even though I was falling in love with him, I knew that he was not at a healthy stage for us to continue to go on. And it really is very difficult. It was very difficult for me to end that relationship at that time, knowing that I loved him and had feelings for him, but knowing that he wasn't where I had set my non-negotiables for. He just wasn't there yet. He still needed a journey, and that needed to be a private time with he and God. We are called
getting out of God's way.
Yes, and when I've said that, we're called to lead people to the Holy Spirit, but we cannot be somebody's Holy Spirit.
That's right.
And you've got to get out of God's way to do a work in them. And so that's what that time frame, and that was, over a year of a break during that.
We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
And to find the one and then to let it slip away for over a year.
Yeah.
Was that scary?
It was scary. But I did have pretty strong convictions on that. I mean, it was scary because, again, I had the fear of being alone. I wanted to share my kids were growing up. I knew that there would be a day that I would be by myself, but I wasn't going to compromise on something that was really important to me.
I remember watching that and thinking, oh my gosh, this woman's serious about her, like her non-negotiables, because I just thought this is the one, and they're going to, they'll get married, and to see that break and to see how convicted you were. And it wasn't like some lying to yourself or raw, strong, resolute. You were sad. No. It was all the gamut of I really think that this was good, and I saw the potential, and I'm kind of sad, but I know it's right to not be with him right now.
Right.
There's some healing to do.
Yes.
By the way, I want to go back.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how we think we know what marriage is. Like it's this magical, you find your person, your soulmate. It's like, no. It's like, it's a promise. That's why we make such a big deal about that day, the covenant.
Yeah.
We're saying, I know your trouble, and so am I. It will bring out the crap that we both have.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to say, I'm going to, until death do us part, rich or poor, sickness, health, better or worse.
Yes.
Until death do us part. I'll never quit. That's the commitment, because it is such a big deal. It's going to be a mirror, and all your stuff's coming out. Yeah. That's true for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the myth or the Hollywood spin on marriage, I think, has been a detriment to us. And so getting back to the core values of what God's intent for marriage is, and what a true covenant committed relationship looks like. And it is hard, and it's so worth it. Yeah. And I know how many years you've been married, right?
33.
And you're reaping the benefit of all that hard work. You've got grandbabies now, and it's
a legacy.
It's a legacy.
And people, I say this all the time, people that think, oh, what's the special about her or him or them? Nothing. We just didn't quit.
Absolutely.
We just didn't quit. We forgive all the time.
Yep.
Peter Rollins, he says, we're all haunted houses full of ghosts, people we've loved and lost, and people that we've hurt and who've hurt us. Marriage brings out our ghosts. Timothy Keller, in his book, The Meaning of Marriage, says, marriage reveals traits that were there all along, but were hidden from everyone, including you.
Yes.
Right? So
love that.
Yeah. So it's this sanctifying thing. Marriage is a crucible. Yeah. And so there's this these words about, you're my person.
Yeah.
It's like, no, when you say I do, you're going to make that choice every single day.
Yes.
To say, I do again. We're moving targets. Life is happening, so we're evolving. Mm-hmm. So will I love you again tomorrow? Will I love you the next day? And
And that's the place that we get it. We say, you fell out of love, or we grew apart, and all those terms that people say. Well, of course, that's what happens in a marriage. So you have to choose it again and again and again. Yeah. But what happens, people let it get too far gone. And, different decisions are made, and there's a lot to try to repair that back.
Right.
But that always brings me back to, and, we write this in the book, you can understand that pull for me, though, that desire of my family unit, and that I was the work, and I was going to fight till the end for that marriage, because it was that covenant. It was that important to me. And that is why, we talk about this in there, that one of my darkest secrets that got revealed to me during this break time was I was still praying for God to restore my marriage.
Yeah. And you say that in a way, it's almost like there's this shameful secret.
Yes.
And I underlined that, and you said, in a miraculous way, and everything would go back to normal. And you said, yes, there it is, the deepest, darkest secret of my healing journey. And I contend that if you don't speak these secrets, these are the ghosts that will become poltergeists, knocking crap around in your house. It's when you speak that, because you felt, I'm sure, maybe foolish, or is this a pipe dream, or a shame? It's like, of course you wanted your family restored. Yeah. Even at this point where you'd met someone else and you think God's going to redeem.
Yes.
Yeah, but maybe he could restore what the locusts have eaten, right?
Absolutely. And so when I think about that, so yes, Jamie needed to take some time to do some healing on his own. But that showed me I actually had some healing to do too. If I was ever going to be able to fully step in and love again, that place in my heart that was still longing for that, I needed some work on that too. I had to do some work.
You got some good lessons in there.
I did.
You took a few U-turns.
I did.
Learning curves.
And that's okay. that's the thing. You can't be afraid of wrong turns, misdirection. The thing I love most about God is, he has a plan for us, and he knows we're going to veer. We're going to make wrong turns. We're going to, go down this road like this. But he always gives us a way back. And it's the lessons that you learn when you make a wrong turn. If you truly take them in and take them to him and do the work around that, like the fact that I could acknowledge the fact that I still was hanging on to that hope of my marriage being restored and having everything back to normal and, riding off into the sunset as
back to normal.
Yeah, back to normal, exactly. Right. So acknowledging that actually was a revelation of work that I still needed to do. So for if and when somebody else came in my life or Jamie came back in my life, I would be in a position to give fully of myself as well.
Honestly, if, held a gun to your head, would you say you knew Jamie was going to come back into your life?
No.
You thinking on that break, it was over?
On that break, it was over as far as my heart was concerned.
Okay.
Because I just really didn't know if he would ever be in the position to where that non-negotiable of mine, the spiritual leader of the home. I mean, that was just that place. And I kept thinking, gosh, if I'm really struggling with him, then maybe it's just supposed to be my marriage back. I just remember, and I did this, I actually did something very private. You know me, I like to talk and share. I decided to do a really private prayer study. It's Mark Patterson's, the 40-day prayer challenge, Draw the Circle. Thank you very much. Where you spend 40 days in prayer, and he kind of guides you through that of what you're doing. And I was writing out this struggle that I was having between the loss of my marriage and my family and this love I did have for Jamie. And I was praying privately around that and just my own struggle. And at the time I was still doing all the great work I love at the healing place. So I was very fulfilled, and I wanted to be really still with God. I was fulfilled in that part of my life, but I was not here, and I wanted to be still so I could hear him speak to me during that time of struggle.
You were patient.
Yes. I did not want to ever walk down that path. I was willing to be patient, and I was willing to be alone with just him. And and like I said, I had, great friends, my kids, my work here, but there was still that desire, but I was willing to keep taking it back to him so I don't make that mistake.
So then take us to that infamous day in the living room in your pajamas.
So after this, after this 40-day prayer challenge deal.
And was it Mark Batterson?
Yeah.
With a B, not Patterson?
It's with a B.
Patterson. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Mark Batterson.
Okay, I just wanted to I heard that right.
Yes. And so I had finished that. And I was just in this kind of this place of just waiting for God to answer. And this had kind of stirred up some things, obviously, with all the hurts and pains of my past and reliving all of the divorce. And I had a very difficult conversation one day with one of my children that made me realize that I was hurting them through hanging on to all of this pain. And it was just, and it was a really hard conversation. And I had to really own some of that, the victim part and all. I was like cycling back to that original, and after all these years, and it was really hard, especially to feel like I had drawn a wedge with my children that I love the most in this world. And so I had really had one of those moments where you cry yourself to sleep. You're just, where am I at, God? What's happening? How did I get here? Just pleading with him. And
if you're there, would you do something?
Yes.
You're like,
I'll like, God, show me.
Show me a sign.
Show me something of what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was one of those days where I'd like literally stayed in my pajamas, canceled everything, and praying out to him, crying out to him. And the doorbell rings. And I'm thinking, I cannot answer this. I haven't even brushed my teeth. And it was the middle of the day, but I'm thinking I'm expecting a package, so I have to go answer it. And I open the door, and it's Jamie. And I was in shock. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't surprised. Mm-hmm. Because I felt like, not that I wasn't surprised that he was there, I wasn't surprised that God moved him in that way.
Yeah.
That's what pretty powerful.
That he had moved him, and here you were, Jamie
had no
had his
idea.
story and his timing, but here you were, ugly cry, pajamas, no brush teeth, middle of the day, and ding dong.
And he had no idea, obviously. We were not communicating at this point. Mm-hmm. And Jamie will tell you on his side is that he knew that there was going to be a day, because he had been working on himself. He had been doing all the things that he was doing to truly have a heart change, truly allowing that Holy Spirit. I was unbeknownst to me. And he knew there was a day. And he just said he got overwhelmed by God calling him to go there now. And he has no idea why. And on a random Tuesday, I think it was, there he is showing up, but it was on one of my darkest days. And I just thought it was such a beautiful, there's not a coincidence. That is God. In fact, I brought it back to you, by the way. And I thought, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah. I remember those phone calls.
Yeah.
I remember how shocked you were afterward, because it went from a frustrating phone call to self-interest, or like you were frustrated initially because of whatever conversation you had.
Yeah.
A little bit of anger. And then all of a sudden, like, grief, right? Like, it was despair, was like, I need to own all of these different things. And then I think it wasn't until the next day that I got the text message of, you wouldn't believe what happened.
Yeah.
How God showed up.
And so for me, and it wasn't even like I was expecting that, but it really was such an amazing, when you do cry out, it's like, God doesn't always answer us right away, and you don't always get a clear cut. But that's why I came to my wise counsel. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and I believe. And so,
because that's like a scene from a movie.
It is like a scene.
And you're like, okay, too good to be true. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so that was amazing. And he's swimming over land and sea, and he's fighting for me, and he's coming and pursuing me.
Right.
And that feels great. But now, has there been the change?
Right.
Right? Are you now ready? Is he ready?
Right.
Are you both now in the place?
Exactly.
How did you get through that to that discerning moment?
Again, he and I had journeyed.
Wisdom.
There is wisdom, and there is just in seeing the action change. And even for those of you that don't know my husband, even for him to make the decision to buy a plane ticket on a random day and fly there and show up, not without being, unannounced, I knew that was a really big deal for him to pursue me that way. And we all, and us women, we all want to be pursued, right? That's a heart desire that somebody would fight for us, right? That I'm worth fighting for.
Well, can I ask a question
Yeah.
for Brian?
Yeah.
What was it like for you to hear that?
I was blown away. So because I knew, and I won't go into the details, but I knew this criteria, this non-negotiable stuff, it was deep stuff. And I thought, you know what? That's valid. I couldn't believe, the character and integrity of both of them, to recognize that and say, you know what? We're not doing this. And I thought, wow, good for them. And so for it to be, here it's back, at first I was like, really? And then, but then I went, of course, like God would do this. And then I was all for it. But the wisdom in a multitude of counselors. So you talked to me, you talked to, it wasn't just like, I'm all giddy. It really was shocking.
And
I was like, really?
I had actually, one other side note I'll tell you that was in between that time too. I don't know, I think you knew this too. And we can get into this on another podcast, but I was also working with Michelle Fitzu on EMDR therapy, which has to do with, a trauma and working through things. And so it was kind of that cool timing of working through because that's what drove me to work through some of my past hurts that kind of reared up inside that relationship with Jamie that I need to work on still. So I never stopped working on myself as well. It wasn't like, he just needed to go work on him. I had work to do, not to do anything with him, but for me to be healthy and healthy to be able to be inside a relationship, healthy to be a wife, all those things that I long to be. So I did do that work as well. But what I do remember that when I told you that, it was like, we're both like, I've got to pursue this. Like, this is such a big thing. And so, we spent the next year.
I thought to myself, what a stud, man. Yeah. This guy does the work, and he goes and has the guts, to do that. And I knew, I trusted your discernment and your judgment that you weren't just going to go, okay, it's all bets are off and we're back in. You were going to do the discerning work. Yeah. But it looked to me like, it's like, of course God would do this. Yeah. What a beautiful thing.
Well, I love when we were talking about it earlier, how you said, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't take the pause. They barrel right through, and it falls right back into the pattern of what you said before of making somebody else your God. It becomes a codependent, kind of enmeshed relationship. Absolutely. Versus two independent people dependent on Christ, walking hand in hand too. the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
That's really good.
Love
I
that.
love that. Yeah. And by the way, so a lot of people feel like, oh, you complete me. You're my, again, that's 50-50. And it's like, no, you have to be complete and whole.
Yes.
They have to be complete and
Yes.
whole. And that's when the two can become one.
Yes.
Some people would say, well, no, it's 50-50 and that makes one. And no, you have to be complete and whole or you're literally sucking the life out of someone else.
that-
Not getting your identity from them.
Absolutely. And that's the whole reason for the road chapter. That's what the road is. It's becoming, you need to become complete and whole, and the other person needs to be complete and whole for this to be a healthy relationship. So
And
that,
I was going to say, ultimately, what is a relationship supposed to emulate?
yeah,
Right? The Trinity.
yes,
And you don't see half of the Holy Spirit and half of God and half of Jesus operating.
no.
You see three distinct persons.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good.
So a year later, Brian and my other great friend from here across Timbers,
Luda, North
Jamie
Carolina.
Mullins, another Jamie, flew to North Carolina and married us in our backyard. It was the most beautiful, emotional,
It was great.
quaint ceremony with everything that I knew I've always wanted was surrounded by nature and family and love. The trees. It was beautiful.
And great pizza.
We did have a really cool pizza truck. And, and I want to say this because I think it's really important that we talk about this because, yes, I found this amazing man and I found love again. But that is not the end of all ends. It was a heart desire of mine, but my healing wasn't because of him. I healed first. And then I was able to have him in because I don't want people to think that, oh, that's the end. Oh, she found her man and she rode off into the sunset. No, this is just a new beginning.
Well, and I'll let
struggle anymore, right?
Yeah, we struggle all the time. That's the point. We struggle. That's the thing. And you've got to be honest about that.
Yeah, and I'll let people, read this part of the chapter, but you talk a lot about how when you don't take that time and do the pause and do your own healing, you became the same version of yourself just in a new relationship. And you start repeating the same mistakes and actually trying to overlay that template of your old just with a new person.
You do that.
Like that's the definition of insanity. What did you I don't think you used that term, but like something about the lesson being
The lesson.
Beat it over and over and expecting different results.
Right. Yeah, and we didn't really talk about that, but I did have a little hiatus after when Jamie and I were broken up. I had one other relationship that was, definitely a step backwards where you were talking about that, just trying to, the old version of you and the old version of your marriage and trying to just put that back together rather than something new and wonderful. Yeah. Now, and again, we'll leave it with that because I don't want anyone to think that their road has to end in a marriage or in another relationship. The road still is all about healing, but if it is your heart's desire, allow that. Just take the time to heal in that and know that God will be with you all along the way.
Don't make the relationship the end goal.
Exactly.
Make your healing and your identity.
Yes.
That's the goal. And then the relationship is a good serendipity on top of it.
I agree.
It's our covenant. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Service becomes the ultimate goal. And if marriage accompanies it,
That's a beautiful.
Beautiful.
Amen.
Beautiful.
Amen to that.